Welcome to the DevReady podcast. Joining me on the DevReady podcast today, I have Klaus Bartosch. For those of you that are new here, I'm meeting Klaus for the first time. We can get to know him with you, and I'll let him take away.
Yeah, excellent. So I guess, Anthony, we're here to talk about the fun journey that founders have trying to get their businesses off the ground. A little bit of background, perhaps, about me might be useful to give some folks some context. So um, I've been in the IT industry now for some 35 years, civil structural engineering by background, but landed in IT some years ago, and I've been on the vendor side and the client side in those decades. Prior to my current business, Dreamoro Group, which is a venture capital company focused on helping health tech founders bring their products to market, I founded and led a health tech business in Australia, which I listed on the stock exchange via an IPO. Ran it for 7 years as a listed company and then exited it in October 2022. And through both my own experiences as a founder in that business and as a early stage partner in some previous businesses, have learned a tremendous amount about what the mistakes that founders make. God knows I've made, I think, almost all of them, and I think the shortcomings that investors have in understanding how to assist and help founders make the right choices and decisions, and that's kind of led us to doing what we do now in Dreamoro Group. And as I mentioned earlier, briefly, I've spoken to some 450 founders now in the last 18 months, and I mean deep conversations, not 5-minute chats, where I've spent some time seeking to understand their business, the problem they're trying to solve, and understanding what, if any, strategy they had, and what has in part surprised me, but in hindsight probably not, should not have, is that of the 450 founders I've met, two had a well thought through, considered strategy. The others didn't have one, in fact, at all, much to their surprise. What they had, when I talk strategy, they tend to go straight to, oh, I've got to go to market plan. Go to market is not strategy. Go to market is a subset of strategy. So founders properly thinking about and understanding how they plan to commercialize what they're creating, who their end customers actually are that they're servicing, what's the core metric that drives accelerated growth for my business, how do I know I'm building the right thing for the right audience, is a key problem that they don't spend enough time solving. Instead, they waste their own capital or sweat equity, waste other people's early stage investment capital in trying to iterate and find product market fit, when if they actually did the homework right and sought the right expertise and support from people around them, they'd end up with a better success.
Yeah.
It's challenging. It's a challenging area to do well.
It definitely is, and it can be a harrowing journey. Especially as you mentioned a little bit earlier before we started, it's a lot of the startups you're talking to, or the founders, they're early 20s. So there's not much experience, there's not much under the belt. There may be a part-time job or two, some couple years in corporate, and they've got a very niche role that they've been working in. And then they're like, all right, I'll go now and be the everyman and be a founder and wear every hat.
On our website, it was almost cathartic to have written it, but on our website, we on dreamoro.com.au, which is spelled dreamoro.com.au. There's a article called The 21 Challenges That Founders Face. There are actually many, many more, but these are the 21 big ones, because for some reason there are at least 21 big ones. And when you drill into it, what you discover is the challenges that a founder has is that they may have domain expertise in the particular topic. They may have experienced a particular problem, but what they've probably never done is any UI UX design, have any idea about back-end architecture and design, how to do software engineering, how to commercialize a product, what marketing looks like, what sales looks like, what effective operations look like, ran a P&L, built a team, led a team. It's that there are so many skill sets that a founder needs to have a capability in that it's challenging. And a lot of founders are typically in their 20s, sometimes in their 30s. And I think the truth is that unless you've spent 15, 20 years in the industry, the probability that you'll have it been exposed to those broad range of skills is pretty low. And as a result, they're making decisions and choices about team members that they're hiring, things that they're doing that are based almost entirely on gut instinct and not on expertise. And that's not an insignificant problem for a founder to have to deal with. And I empathize deeply with those challenges. Even in my last business, which I founded, I was an experienced IT executive. I had dealt with the broad range of technology experiences that someone would expect to have. I thought I knew enough of what I needed to know, and discovered that even with that knowledge and skill set, we were making lots of mistakes. Like the first key big five strategic mistakes, the key five big decisions we made when we first launched our last company, we had all our strategic decisions wrong. And so it's difficult, but not impossible to do it right. And to do it right means to sit back and work through a process to define your strategy well, and define the problem you're solving well. And so I spend a lot of time these days working with founders, helping them think through the playing to win strategy process by Lafley and Martin, which in my mind is easily the simplest, cleanest, and most easily understood strategic model for any business. And when you work through that process, it helps you define and understand what it is that you're trying to do, what market you're going after, who your end customer actually is, how you're going to commercialize it. All of those are necessary inputs in defining product. And I'll give another example of a kind of a key question that I ask founders all the time, which is, every business, without exception, every business has one core metric that drives accelerated growth. Not just growth, but accelerated growth. And understanding what that core metric is for a founder's business is a really important decision that founders need to work through. I mean, it might be spending 5 minutes a day engaged on a platform. It might be repeat visits. It might be, spend in a given month. It'll be a range of different things, but it's always one thing, and that one thing, all other metrics are subservient to it. They are supportive of it. And if you can figure out what that core metric is, it has a profound impact on how you think about your product, and how you're going to take it to market, and how you're going to measure whether or not you're being successful or not.
Yeah, and that comes down to tracking everything and understanding, all right, as an ROI number, where's you going to get the best bang for your buck, which is going to get you to accelerate growth, as you mentioned. So you imagine if it's 5 minutes on a platform, that is, if you spend 5 minutes on a social platform commenting, liking on people's posts, does that help you get more customers, which helps you increase your growth? Or may it be you have to put a certain number of money, certain dollars into a certain advertising budget potentially, because that'll help you get that growth. There's a lot of different factors. Trying to identify that is a challenge, I think, sometimes.
Working out the key metric that drives accelerated growth is really critically important, and it often can take a little while to work that out. It's sometimes it's obvious. In a lot of cases, it's not. But once you work it out, once you figure that out, it has a profound impact on the shape and direction of what you're building and what you're doing. And it's certainly one that founders need to spend a lot of time on, thinking hard about. And you can measure everything, but all that will do is confuse you.
Yes.
Realistically, there are 3 to 5 key metrics that you'll be wanting to manage and follow. A lot of them you hear often about, cost to customer acquisition and churn and lifetime value and things like that are obviously important, but they of themselves don't drive accelerated growth. And so working that stuff out is important, as well as working out who your customer actually is. You might think it's obvious, and more often than not, I've discovered in a lot of founders that the person who they think they're selling to is actually not their customer at all. So I'll give you an example of of accelerated growth in, to give it a bit of context. So most folks know Xero, which is why I use the example, Xero being the accounting system that's available online.
Yep.
They built and still have what arguably would have to be the most beautiful, simple online accounting and invoice package there is. And in their early days, they were struggling to figure out how to get significant growth occurring in their business. And accountants thought of them as the enemy until Xero realized that the problem an accountant has is they can only take on so many customers because they only have so much of their own time available. The bulk of their work is boring, which is bookkeeping work, which is boring, not really utilizing the core skill that they had. And they have to keep working in order to generate an income. There's no passive income opportunity for them. Once Xero recognized and once accountants recognized that accountants could be their sales engine, bring more customers onto the platform, enable that accountant's customers to do the basic bookkeeping and work themselves, and then have the accountant manage the more sophisticated tasks of running and supporting the accounting functions for that business. Accountants suddenly found that they had A, more clients, B, a passive income coming from the sales of Xero that they generated, and inevitably Xero turned the global accounting industry into its sales team, Salesforce. Extraordinary. That's what I'm talking about in terms of understanding who is your real customer here,
Yep.
who you're actually selling to. And that really needs to be thought through carefully by every business. It's sometimes it's obvious. I find often it's not obvious who the real customer is, and that takes a bit of work and effort to resolve.
Oh, definitely. Well, we've seen that with products that we've built and then products that we help clients build. They may have an idea in their mind of who they're actually targeting, but generally when it's a B2B play from experience, it's the end user is the customer. So the business's customers are your customers, not the business you're selling it to. They just get a benefit from that. So it's hard to narrow or see through the trees sometimes.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. But also, I think the opportunity that founders have that isn't thought hard enough about, and people talk about it, which is this kind of co-designer process, which is working with end users to co-design a solution that actually solves the key problems that they want solved. I have when people talk about, I've built an MVP and I brought an MVP to market, MVP being minimal viable product, right? And I look at what they've created and go, it's not an MVP, it's a POC, it's a proof of concept. Don't kid yourself in believing you have an MVP. It's the wrong language and the wrong term. And a minimal viable product is one that actually is delivering and servicing the needs of customers in a way that customers find enjoyable and appreciate. Not, I've generated something here, now I'm struggling to get users onto it. That means you've actually got a POC, you don't have an MVP yet. It's a really interesting kind of dynamic. And I think that people people talk about product market fit as a kind of a key thing. And again, I hear people saying they've found product market fit. Bullshit. Most of them haven't. Product market fit is when the thing is racing off ahead of you at 1,000,000 miles an hour and growing so quickly because the product is profoundly good in the market. And the simplest way to understand, this is my take on whether you have product market fit, is if when your customer sees it and experiences it, I'm going to use some expletives here, so I apologize to the audience in advance.
It's fine.
But if the reaction from the end user is, oh my effing God, this is amazing, I can't live without it, I have to have it, I've got to tell all my friends and family about it, that's product market fit. When the reaction is so emotive and so strong and so compelling that you go, God damn it, this is amazing, that's when you've got product market fit. Until then, it's like, yeah, it's nice, it's interesting, it's exciting. It's, simply saving 40% in cost for a customer is these days not enough to generate strong market appetite for what you've created. And so, understanding that you're looking for a certain reaction which is deeply emotional, deeply reactive, and comes with, a really strong reaction, positive reaction, is when you're onto what could be product market fit.
Yeah.
And finding that takes time, energy, and effort and iterations.
It does. And it may seem like it's a simple idea that gets to product market fit. But I was on a call yesterday with a client and a technical team for a deployment, and the team on the other end was like, I don't know what this product is until today because it's the first time they've seen it. They're like, I didn't understand how this wasn't in the market earlier. It was such a simple idea, but it's been executed well where it just seems like it should have been the normal all the time. And when you hear feedback like that, that's, you know that they've hit the nail on the head.
They've landed on something. Now the challenge they've got, of course, is, and what I heard you say without you saying it was, it takes a customer a while to understand what it is.
Sometimes.
And so understanding how best to market and position a product so that people can get it straight away is a challenge. Marketing, effective marketing is challenging and difficult, and sadly, in my opinion, most so-called marketers don't know what they're doing. And so, you know, people who really understand marketing are rare and far and few between. And when you find them, they're pretty impressive. We have an advisor on our team who's a marketing expert I've known for a very long time, and he gets it. He understands it. Most folks don't. But there's a lot of skill needed to be successful in bringing a product to market. And even if you've built the best product, it doesn't mean you will win. In my decades in the industry, the one thing I've learned is having their best product guarantees you nothing. It's not uncommon for your competitor who has a lesser quality product to be more successful, in part because they are better at marketing, or in part because they have more capital at their fingertips to throw at marketing. And so it's not often that having the best product is of itself sufficient to actually win a market.
Completely agree that it's not one metric, whether it's the best marketing or the best product, or it's a factor of things. And when you're better at a few of those compared to whoever you're competing with, you'll exceed them. Just touching on the marketing there, I find a lot of the marketing ends up being a lot of like trial and error. It's testing something, seeing if it works. If it doesn't, test something else, and just keep reiterating.
So that's certainly okay. I don't have a particular problem with the kind of trial and error of testing around marketing, providing, you know, it's being done sensibly and well. I have a few challenges with marketing and marketers, and that is that they don't want to hold themselves accountable for the measure that matters. Mm-hmm. And the only measure that matters isn't how many clicks you got, how many click-throughs you got, how many likes you got, but for every $100 you spend on marketing, how many sales you got.
Yep.
And so I don't care whether you sent me 100 leads. I care I care how many of those led to a sale and what the value of that sale was. And so putting together a math that simply says I spent this much and I got this much in revenue, that's the only measure that matters. Everything else is complete bullshit. Is the simple truth. And so that's a real challenge in the way marketers think, is they, especially agencies that you engage, they don't want to be held accountable for actual results that matter to a business, and they avoid it. They avoid being held accountable for it. And I think if they're genuinely good at what they do, then they need to understand that their alignment needs to be to the measures that matter for the business, and what matters for the business inevitably are conversions to sales and the revenue generated for the spend. That's the only ROI that actually makes any difference.
Yeah,
and that's
the return on ad spend is the key metric there if you do any advertising, any marketing. And then if you can tweak to reduce the cost of acquisition, that just makes that number multiply. So you have to focus on the top end first, and then you can introduce the efficiencies there.
Yeah, CAC's interesting, which is CAC being CAC, customer acquisition cost. And the reason it's interesting is that I often see people say they spend $1,500 on an ad and they got X number of sales. And I go, that's terrific, but that wasn't your only cost for a customer acquisition. You had salespeople, marketing people, other related costs. A fully loaded cost is what you need when thinking about cost of customer acquisition. That's really, really kind of key.
Yeah, there's the onboarding,
in the
whatever
process.
is involved in that whole process.
You've got to look at it holistically. Absolutely critically important, because it's not until the customer's on board and committed that it matters. And in some cases, people will look at CAC but ignore that there's a percentage of customers that leave within 3 months.
Yep.
And you've actually got to look at, whenever I do this, you look at like, oh, what's the churn that happens in the first 3 months, factor that into your acquisition cost and accept that as not a converted customer.
Okay.
And
So
that way you're
don't bring down
seeing,
your customer lifetime value or average it. It's just don't just factor them
be
out completely.
brutal. Be brutal in your assessment of real customer acquisition cost. So be really brutal in understanding that early churn means that you didn't win the right customer.
Correct, because they're
They
not
didn't
sticking
stay on
around.
board, and so don't think of that as a success. It's actually not,
Yep.
and so include that as part of your cost, or include it as the actual number of customers I got. I might have got 20 in this process that I converted, but 5 left in the first 3 months, which meant I actually got 15. And so use 15 as the number of customers I got for the investment I made, not 20 is the point.
Yep.
And it's you'll end up as a result of that, getting a much more realistic view of what's actually happening in the business versus kidding yourself and believing that you're seeing numbers that look lofty, but they're bullshit.
Yep. It's being true to what's actually happening.
I think you have to be really clear-minded and transparent with yourself about what's working and what isn't, and how to get that right. I wouldn't mind talking about strategy for a moment because it is such a critical topic, and I mentioned the Playing to Win. It's a Playing to Win book by Lafley and Martin, where it describes this kind of five integrated steps to defining strategy. It starts with a winning aspiration, and then deciding where you want to play, which is a bit like what segment do you want to go after, how you're going to win in that chosen place you're going to play, what capabilities do you need in order to execute that plan, and then what management systems and measures do you have to put in place to validate that the strategy is working. They're the kind of 5 integrated steps in the process. Key is understanding where you want to play. And the reason is that another problem early stage companies make is they want to focus on securing everything in the market. So I'll give you an example. Healthcare being in the space that I operate in, you might say that where I want to play are hospitals. Okay, but that's actually a really broad market. What kind of hospitals? Day hospitals, public hospitals, private hospitals, regional hospitals, small hospitals. Hospitals run by private enterprise, hospital runs by religious groups. There are, eye hospitals, psychological hospitals. Like there are multiple different categories. And so being really, really clear and focused matters in strategy. And so there are always going to be many places you could play, but deciding where I'm going to play and then win and then expanding from there matters. And so as another example, you might say where I'm going to play is Western Sydney. And I'm only going to pursue women between the ages of 25 and 55 or whatever it is.
Yep.
And be really clear about winning that segment. So I've won that segment, I've won there now, I'm now going to go after Northern Sydney. But that focus is so critical. When you're an early stage company, you don't have endless resources, endless capital, endless time. You need to prove and succeed with every move you make. And so being highly focused around where you want to prove and win really matters. And so the decision around where you want to play is critical, as is the winning aspiration, which is a much more interesting definition than the classic, our mission is blah and our vision is blah, which is lovely, but winning aspirations is core to this process, and it really gives you a real clear focus on what you're trying to do. Some folks call it their North Star.
Yep.
What's the problem they're really trying to solve? But being able to decide where you want to actually focus is just so critically important to succeeding as an early stage company and being quite brutal about that. Versus the other thing that happens with founders is they do what I call chasing the money. That is a prospective customer they've tripped over and is looking to want to do business with them. They like the idea of what they've created. And so then you find this founder building product capability to support a specific customer. intuitively might sound like it's a good idea, but is that customer capability that you're building and creating aligned with your strategy and direction of where you're going? Is it aligned with where you want to play? Or is it simply distracting you from your main focus and path? The desire to have revenue early can often lead you to chasing this customer and securing them and believing you're doing the right thing when all you end up doing is um, building product capability around one specific customer that may not be representative of the market you're actually seeking to want to go after, because you haven't yet decided what market is you're seeking to want to go after.
Yep.
And that's another common massive mistake that founders often make.
I think that's probably a challenging one for early stage founders because there's revenue there, so they're trying to just chase revenue, and it's a quicker piece of revenue to get through the door. But it does take away capability from building the core product, finding the right market, targeting the right customers. So you're sacrificing the longer term vision for that short term gain.
But it's not even a short-term gain. It's a distraction more often than not.
Yes.
And the revenue you're getting isn't
Once off,
sufficient
potentially.
enough. Isn't sufficient to fund the business. Like if your costs were $10,000 a month and the customer you're chasing is going to deliver you $15,000 a month, then it's kind of hard not to ignore the impact of that, providing that it's going to generate significant revenue for you and make you profitable. But it's never the case. Inevitably, you're chasing a customer that's going to make you $500 a month or $1,000 a month. Your actual costs are 10 or 20 or more, and that winning that customer is going to do nothing more than drag you down a rabbit hole. And it is hard. They're hard decisions to have to make. There's a great book written by, I think it's Peter Thiel from memory, called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And it's about understanding that as a founder and leader of a company, you have to make lots of difficult choices and lots of difficult decisions. And it's by making those difficult choices and decisions that keeps you focused on what you have to do. There's a story about when PayPal were they were growing significantly, and they had landed eBay as a customer, and they had these thousands and thousands of customers complaining to them about some aspect of their product, and they knew that they didn't have the support capability to support those inquiries from those customers. But what they had to do was focus on building the capability to solve the problem. So they chose to ignore for a year thousands and thousands of customer complaints while they went about building strategically the capability needed to solve the problem. And that's gutsy stuff.
It is.
And it worked for them tremendously. And I think, there are some real lessons in that, which is keeping your eye on the place you're going and deciding what's going to get you there, and not being misled by the noise around you right now is really important.
And it's hard to filter that, especially if you're a early or a young founder and you haven't had enough experience in the business world, trying to emulate something you see as what they're calling like the tech bros, or you're trying to be that startup founder and just raise and be able to then promote, oh, we raised X, we're at Series A, we've raised Y. Understanding how to run a successful business and knowing the right decisions to make to keep you on the right path is difficult for an experienced business person, let alone a very young person without the experience.
It's interesting. I'm smiling because the reason that those behaviors occur at all is because of the way the human mind has been designed to work. And so we all look for confirming evidence for why we're right.
Yep.
What we don't do is look for the opposite of that, look for why we're wrong. And one of the best things you can retrain your brain to do is to look for why you're wrong. Look for, what am I not seeing? What should I be seeing? Where might the mistakes be? What's the, this looks instinctively like it might be the right decision, but why might it not be the right decision? And focusing much more heavily on that question will often lead you to better outcomes. And so, and the thing about, it's effectively confirmation bias is another kind of term, the way people describe it, right? Which is,
Yep.
I think I have. Customers are buying my service. That's terrific. People telling me that I'm fantastic, and the product seems to be going well, and blah 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, but you're missing inevitably a range of other things, because all you're hearing is what you want to hear, rather than actually looking deeper at what might be wrong, what might not be going well, who am I, who should I be listening to that's giving me better insight into what's going on. And that's really difficult because being a founder is hard as hell. It's tough. There isn't enough conversation around how difficult it is, the challenges they face. A lot of founders give up within the first 2 years because it's so hard.
Yep.
That just does their head in. And so, how do you get up every day, apply yourself 150% every single day when you're faced with challenges and difficulties and problems? And that's why we like confirmation bias, because it makes us feel good, even though all we're doing is actually bullshitting to ourselves.
Yep.
And that's really a really challenging thing to kind of manage and deal with. But if you can focus on, on properly and objectively assessing everything in the right way, you're doing well. I'll give another example of kind of this point. There's a founder I met some years ago, I've known for a while, and she's building a product that is solving a particular problem in children. And the size of the market of children affected by this particular problem globally is about 200 million children, so a lot of people.
Yep.
And I said to her, so tell me, over the next 3 years, what's your business plan? How many users will you have? How many children will you have serviced? She says, we plan to get to 20,000 in 3 years. And my response to that was, why are you bothering? If the problem is 200 million children and you're only addressing 20,000 of them, you're doing nothing useful. You're wasting time. And what's interesting about that question is, if instead you said, I need to get to 1 million children in 3 years, sounds lofty, sounds outrageous, but what it will do is lead you to making a set of strategic decisions that are more likely to get you to 1 million than to 20,000.
Yeah.
And so, the choices you make, the decisions you make are heavily led by the goals you can set for yourself, but be sensible about setting goals that are not so much lofty, but that actually makes sense. If your desires have an impact, then be serious about what the impact needs to be, and be clear about that goal, and then make a set of decisions and choices that are likely to get you there. Because if the objective is to get you to 1 million, I'll guarantee you'll make a set of strategic decisions around marketing, team capability, capital, product. They're going to be very different than if you're trying to go for 20. If you're trying to go for 20, you'll get to 5. If you're trying to go to 1 million, you'll get to 200,000. It's an ironic, human, natural outcome.
Yeah. Well, people tend to look for the evidence that supports their position or their beliefs. So that's the confirmation bias side. But then if you aim higher than you would have, and you don't hit that target, you're still going to be well above than the conservative target you're targeting, like you mentioned. It's sitting down and having the ability to think about, like you said, having that strategy on how do I actually approach this to achieve a better target where I'm actually making an impact and a difference. And most people don't do that.
Just want to caution a bit about what you just said, because I agree with you, but it's not about setting a higher target per se, because that's just too easy. It's not about that. It's about recognizing how big is the problem you're trying to solve, and if you're seeking to solve it, then what should I sensibly seek to achieve in the first 3 years in order to demonstrate that I'm actually making serious progress against that.
Yep, true.
And my argument is 20,000 children out of a possible 200 million is not making any progress at all.
No,
that's entirely pointless.
Fraction of a percent.
That's my only point. So, setting a lofty target is setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, anyone can set an unrealistic goal.
Useful.
Yep.
But it's being sensible and going, look, what's the and you can, there's a process you can work through to get there. But it's understanding that and working that out that really matters. But this is all part of strategy. Figuring this stuff out is critical to defining what is it you're trying to create, who you're trying to create it for, how you're going to make money doing it, how you're going to measure the successful results around it, how you're going to take it to market, where are you going to start in terms of your place to play, and how big is the market really, which is another onion, the classic total addressable market question. And that's where people again mislead themselves. Oh, there are, 200 million people in the world that are going to want what I do. Well, really, let's just break that down into, we know that a third never will, because it's a classic bell curve of adoption, right? So you know that there's 15% that are early adopters that are going to take it on board, and then the next 30% after that. What are the age demographics of people who would actually take this on board? And suddenly, as you drill into it, you'll break down this into a sensible total addressable market, which will be some fraction of what you thought it was,
Definitely.
and then you can focus on securing a piece of that market. But I mean, every investor pitch I see has a classic hockey stick in it for growth and success, and the only ones that have ever done that, people like Afterpay, it's rare.
Yeah.
Most founders are an overnight success after 10 years in the industry, having a crack at trying to get it going.
Yep.
So it's a really interesting kind of balance in being successful.
And the allure of being a founder or a startup founder, I think, is what may confuse some people and not allow them to make strategic decisions to get to actually achieve what they want to achieve.
So what do you think is the allure of being a founder?
Oh, to me, I'm not sure. It's more probably with the social media age that you see things where everyone's a founder, they're living a certain lifestyle, they're able to raise millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, so people are attracted to that.
This is where I think the whole rosy picture of being a founder is another load of bollocks. You talk to most founders and get them to open up honestly about their experiences, and what you'll find is it's a torturous journey.
Yep, 100%.
80% fail.
Yeah,
Right? 80% fail, and there's nothing joyous about failing in a venture.
no.
In the US, investors won't back you until you've had at least 3 failures, because they know that that's the lessons you learn from those experiences will set you up to make better decisions next time round.
Yep.
I think in Australia, where we tend to have a tall poppy syndrome problem, which means if you've been a founder and you've failed, we shouldn't back you again. Well, that's just nuts. If you've been a founder and failed, but you've demonstrated you've actually learned a shitload from that experience and you apply yourself to the next venture, and that's proving to be more successful, then they're good folks to back, not bad folks to back. But we're kooky in this country when it comes to attitude towards that stuff. Yeah, it's your classic tall poppy syndrome. It's the English influence versus the American can-do attitude, which is quite different. They respect people that are having a go. Here we jump and pounce on people that have failed, and I don't think failure is a part and parcel of the journey.
Yeah, definitely. That's the only way you're going to learn the lessons and make the mistakes to help you know the right decision.
You shouldn't have to. Hopefully, you've found yourself some mentors and folks around you who can share with you their life experiences as a founder and help you avoid as many of those pitfalls as you can. Some things as a founder you have to experience, because no matter how many times you tell your teenage children the things they should and shouldn't do, they still have to go through the journey of experiencing that pain themselves before they reflect on it and go, my God, my dad was right. Yeah. That's just the way some things are. But as a founder, you can absolutely benefit tremendously from listening to the people around you that have actually had real experiences. But be careful that you're listening to people that have had some real experiences, not just claiming they have had those experiences.
Yeah. I liken that experience to becoming a father. Before you have your baby's born, everyone tells you 1,001 pieces of advice. None of it sticks until you have the baby, and then you go through and you realize, all right, you pick the ones that actually apply or that made sense, because you have to go through the process to understand the perspective that someone's gone through sometimes. So like you said, sometimes you have to go make the mistakes, but other times you can take on advice and try and sidestep it.
That topic's a big topic in itself. I mean, Western society has, you often hear the word, it takes a village to raise a child. And that's because in a proper village environment, all the different folks in that village contribute massively to helping those parents raise that child, where in Western society we're on our own. Yep. There is no manual provided, and we don't listen to our parents, and our parents aren't actively involved in the raising of those children as a general rule. So it's certainly an interesting challenge. I mean, I'll give another example of. I mean, health tech is, as I said, the sector that my business focuses on, and one of the interesting things about healthcare is it's entirely reactive industry, right? Which means you fall sick, we will try to fix you after you've fallen sick.
Yeah.
Now, think about it like this though: when you buy a car, a brand new car, you're given a book. In that book, it says you got to perform these services at these different intervals, and we religiously do them for the first 5 years. And the reason why we do them is because we know that if we don't and we break down, the inconvenience of breaking down and the cost of repair is significant. We don't take that same logic with our own health and our body. There actually is a book written by the AMA, and it's called the Red Book. And the Red Book is your Bible that tells you about all the different cancer screenings and health screenings you should have throughout your life at different stages to allow you to proactively manage identifying risks and problems before they occur, so that you're dealing with those things, but we don't do them with ourselves. And it's a really kind of, I find it interesting that we have access to these things that can guide us, but we choose to ignore them for one reason or another. Founders are the same. They're bloody minded in their belief in themselves, overly confident about the things they think they know, and yet reveal frequently with the decisions they make that they didn't know. And they're hard lessons to have to learn.
As long as they can learn the lessons from them, make the right decision next time. That's what matters. There's a lot of people keep repeating mistakes.
Founders who listen well, who invite feedback, who appreciate being challenged. In fact, on this appreciation of being challenged, I often say to my teams, and my teams over the years know this because it would ring in their ears at the frequency with which I would say it. But effectively, customers, partners, staff, investors telling me and telling us what we're doing well, I can't do anything with. Telling me that something is terrific, I can't do anything with. People telling you and challenging you and telling you why you're wrong and what's bad and what could be improved, those are opportunities that should be embraced. And so, I can't do anything with someone blowing smoke up my ass. It's completely useless to me.
Yeah.
People, telling me where I'm going wrong or where the company's making mistakes or where the product needs to be improved, that's invaluable. And so focusing on eliciting that kind of input is important. Being willing to be challenged, asking questions that invite being challenged is important. Most founders don't like being challenged. Most founders don't like being questioned. They struggle with people who are asking them tough questions and raising tough issues with them, when in fact, within those comments are rivers of gold, and they should be embraced and appreciated and exploited and evaluated and tested. They might still be wrong, but don't ignore them. Don't be silly enough to ignore them, but invite them. Ask people. Like, I don't go to someone and say, tell me why you think my product's fantastic. I'd rather go to someone and say, tell me where you think we've got it wrong, where I could make improvements, where things are not right. And do that with your product, your people, everything. It's really, really important.
Well, they're all the opportunities for growth.
100%. Well, within those insights, you end up finding something quite profound and quite interesting.
Klaus, I'm sure we could keep talking for another hour or two easily.
Doubt.
I'm just conscious of time. So if anyone wants to hear more about you or learn more about yourself and Dreamoro, how can they do that?
Now, look, the easiest way is if you go to dreamoro.com.au, there's a contact us page there. They're welcome to drop a line there. Alternatively, my email address is easily found as well. It's just Bartosch, Bartosch at dreamoro.com.au, or my LinkedIn profile. There are only I think one Klaus Bartosch, maybe two on LinkedIn globally. I'm therefore easily found and connected with via LinkedIn as well, and people are very welcome. They'll also find I write a lot of LinkedIn articles and posts and blogs, and as there are on the Dreamoro website that expand on the topics that we've talked about today. So certainly happy for people to reach out anytime. No concerns whatsoever. Feel free.
No problem, and we'll add all of that to the show notes and when we post the episode. Once again, it's been an amazing and interesting chat, and I'd love to continue this another time. But thank you for your time today, and I appreciate it.
Pleasure. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.